I keep getting asked how I use Claude Code day to day and how to set it up. And I tried to set up a new machine and ran into a lot of issues. And so I thought other people might run into similar issues. And so I'll do a walkthrough of how I'll set it up on a almost new machine, step by step. And as I run into issues, you can see what I do, how I debug, and how I ask Claude to fix that. But the first thing I'll do is actually download a new terminal app instead of using the default one, which is slower and harder to use. If you're going to use this day to day over a chat interface, it will make it a lot more fun to use and you'll come back to it more often. And Ghosty works really well on Apple Silicon devices such as the M1, M2, M3. It'll be much faster. You can also use iTerm as well. So I'll install that and then I will move that in and then I'll open up the Ghosty app. And so the nice thing about Ghosty is that you can split the views using Command D. It'll split it right. If you do Command Shift D, it will split it down. And then you can close that surface with Command W. And so it'll make it really easy for you to open multiple chat windows at the same time and see all of your agents running in parallel. So once I set that up, I'll download Claude Code, which I already have it installed here, but if you're installing it for the first time, you can just go to the website for Mac OS. And the first thing I'll ask Claude to do is I'll ask Claude to set the models to be Opus. And I only use Opus. So I'll type in Claude and then it will default to Sonnet, but I'll first change it to be Opus and it won't set the default to be Opus. So each time I open up Claude Code, for example, I can exit this using Control C and then I'll type Claude again and then I'll go back to Sonnet. And so I'll want to change it to be Opus. And so here it'll ask me to update that. I'll say yes. And then new sessions will have Opus now. So now when I start a new Claude Code session, I'll do Control C twice to exit. And then another useful thing is Command D is clear the terminal window screen. So I'll clear it up so I'll get a fresh slate so I can see it. I'll type Claude in again, and now I'll default to Opus. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it to set my alias so that I can use it with dangerously skip permissions. Ideally, you would use this in a sandbox or virtual machine, but day to day, if you don't have this set or if you do auto set, you end up having to continuously click enter. And I would say that if you're on Sonnet, I would be more worried about using this because in the past I have had, and so I would definitely recommend using Opus with this so you run into less issues because it's just a smarter model. So now that I've set this, what you'll notice is it asks me to run this. So I'll show you what happens when I exit this window and I do the alias, which is a shortcut. Nothing happens. And that's because I need to source the ZSHRC to get the new alias. And then now I'll be able to use this shortcut with bypass permissions. And then here I can now run it without having to approve every permission. And a lot of people I know use this, and there are ways to make it more secure, such as setting up configuration where Claude can't run certain commands. We can go into that in a future video if that's helpful. But now let's exit out of this again, start a new window, just use CC from now on for any new window. And you'll see here, since I already had this view open, it's not going to work with this alias. And so I'll need to source it again and then run CC and then it'll work. Or if I just open up and it'll automatically work. And so you'll see that. And so I'll exit this again, and then Command W to close it out. So I just have one chat window. So the next thing I'm going to do is ask it to set up a shortcut for screenshots. So I do this on my Mac so it's easier to give Claude context when I'm running to issues. I will have, let's say, a error, a bug. I'll just use this shortcut. So now Command E will let me take a screenshot and then I can paste it in. But in the terminal, to paste it, you'll use Control V instead of Command V. But I'll show you how to set it up so you can use Command V. So now it's working, as you can see. So I'll exit this window. I'll start a new window again. And you can start it in the same window, but I'm just showing you having a blank slate without any context. Can you help me install Homebrew? So this is important because in order to make the terminal easier to use, installing some packages in the terminal will make a lot of things easier and give Claude a lot more power to do things on your behalf. So here, Claude will tell me it's not installed, and so it'll tell me to run this in the window. So that's exactly what I'll do. And then here I'll request my password, and then I'll install Homebrew. So that's the first thing that I'll do. And then once I install Homebrew, I'll ask Claude to help me install a few other packages. So now it's installed. Next steps, run this. I'll copy this in. Can you run this for me? So if you're not comfortable with the terminal, any point in time now, if you run into issues, I just ask Claude to run all of that for you. And so here it's telling you to run that source and then it'll be available. And so here I'll run source and then brew will be available. And so now brew's available. And so then here in the same window, I can ask it to help me install a few other packages. Let's just try that. Help me install. So these are quality of life upgrades. If you install these, you can look on GitHub to see exactly what they are. They're all open source and they'll just make the terminal experience better so that as we do more things, which I will create in another video of some things that you can do, it will make using the terminal much easier. And all of them require changing something in your configuration. So I'll just ask Claude to do that. But the first thing I'll probably do next is I'll ask it to add aliases for this. Can you help also add? So this will just make using the terminal a lot easier. Well, let's say I exit this out and then I open a new terminal window. But maybe the first thing that might be helpful is let's just create a folder structure. And so let's say you can create a folder in your documents or your downloads, but I just create one here. So let's just call this projects. And then now I'll have a folder for projects, and then I can cd as change directory. I'll be able to change directories into that. And then I can list and see what values or files there are, or I can just open up the project folder. So here, now that I have this set up, kind of see a little bit of how to use certain things. I'm going to ask Claude, can you write a MD file here called test, just so you can see how Claude can now do things on your behalf. And you'll see it right here. And so you can tell it to draft messages and files, or can you also create a test file and add hello world to that text file. So first thing I'm going to do is let's ask Claude to set up this. Help me install brew. So this is just a open source project I have that will make copying and pasting screenshots into the terminal much more easy with Command V. And so I'll ask Claude to do that, and then it will install that Mac app for me. And so you'll see here, hello world. And so instead of in the browser asking Claude questions and it creating documents for you and they just exist in the browser, you have to copy and paste that into whatever window that you have. It's kind of just the beginning of what you can do with creating files on your computer and just making those changes automatically. And so now that we have that, I can go in here and then the CopyCat, I'll open it up and then I'll give it permissions. And this just gives it permission to now paste into the terminal. So you can see here, I'm going to change this to B, and then you'll see a temp folder. And then you can kind of see the different apps that they have. And then now when I'm going to do the screenshot, and then when I do Command V this time, it'll print out that screenshot. What does this say? And then now you can use that more easily. And whenever you run into any issues, you can copy it and paste it more easily. Now that we have that set up, we probably don't need that menu bar. Just turn that off so it'll be invisible. And that's how you use Claude Code.